the Pittsburgh Steelers agreed to terms with two new guys, Keanu Neal and Breiden Fehoko, which I'm hoping I say that last name right. If not, we'll get it right at some point. Big signings. Both of them, I think, are more depth pieces than anything. What was your initial reaction when you saw those last night?
Yeah, definitely agree. Definitely depth pieces. Those guys there's paths to both of them potentially earning starting roles. But I think, definitely not guys that are going to be guaranteed, spots, even, necessarily on the roster. But on the surface, I did like or see the reasoning behind both signings. Neil has, tons of experience. He's played a lot of snaps, former first round pick. So he's got the draft pedigree, played some linebacker, played both safety positions, more of a box guy, more of a guy that's going to thrive, moving forward. I also think that he kind of sets him and Landon Roberts kind of have that same theme of like kind of what their offseason has been about and just like physicality. And I think that, Roberts and Neal play the football the same way. There's an element of violence to their games. And then Fehoko, they needed to add a cheap nose tackle somewhere, like to compete with Montrevious Adams, just to add depth there, just in case, there's not a guy in the draft class that they're able to come away with here next month. So,
yeah, I agree. I think that they're both good players. Do you really think that they don't have a spot to make the roster? Like, I think both of them, maybe not Fehoko. I think that's, depends on how the draft goes. But unless I kind of look at Keanu Neal as a guy that removes the safety blanket. Like the Steelers, I think, are realizing or have realized long ago when they tried to get Terrell Edmunds back that they wanted to go safety in the draft, but they have so many needs that if they prioritize safety without at least getting a backup plan, then they're forced to go draft a safety. Now they could look at it and say, if a safety falls to us, good for us. If not, we could totally ignore it and we'll be okay. I also think that it brings in the conversation of, the Brian Branch, the Anthony Johnson Juniors, I saw, who are they talking to out of Louisville? Who's the slot corner in Louisville?
Kei'Trel Clark.
Yeah, Kei'Trel Clark. I saw that they have interest in him. I think that it kind of shows their hand of what maybe they've been trying to tell us, and we just, weren't interpreting it the same way, is that those guys that could play the slot, that could play the nickel, that might be their approach in the draft. I just think that Neal, kind of rounds that out, gives them that ability.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a path to him earning playing time. I definitely think, it's going to be interesting to see how the draft plays out. Only reason I say like not guaranteed, a spot is, it kind of reminds me a little bit of like when they signed Carl Joseph a couple years back. Like I feel like when they did that, they kind of had this idea in mind that Joseph was going to come in, play some like dime for them in sub-package football. And that's kind of what I felt like with Neal too, just watching him. But I think he's a perfectly competent box safety to where like if they don't get the guy, the board doesn't fall a certain way in the NFL draft, they can, feel comfortable going into the season with him and KZ and, they can put that need off for like another year. I like that.
Yeah, I agree. 27 years old. I think it was a good signing. Steelers football, like the 8 interceptions. I think that spot on. I'm glad you brought up the Carl Joseph thing because the dime backer, I think, is where we're going to see a lot of Neal. Like the fact that he played, I didn't watch, I don't watch the Cowboys. Never watched the Cowboys. Do you remember him playing middle linebacker there at all? I was a little shocked. I won't lie.
Yeah, I remember that offseason, like him going through that switch. I know,
do you remember that switch? What was the switch? Like, was he not
he was
good
literally
in Atlanta?
just playing like he was playing like full-time linebacker. I don't really recall watching too much tape. I'm sure I saw them live that year, but I didn't watch the tape on it. I know like he did not grade out very well for Pro Football Focus. I just checked that out of curiosity. But no, he's definitely, I think I was reading something last night when I was just doing some research. he said that when he signed with Tampa, he was really excited about moving back to safety. Like he was really excited about that move. Like he felt like, he's just a lot more comfortable at safety. He said he doesn't regret necessarily the inside linebacker transition, but he was happy to be going back to safety. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah. Me too. I like the move. Like I said, good Terrell Edmonds replacement. I think on the defensive line too. I don't think that necessarily changes anything for the draft. Do you see differently, or you kind of agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, Neal has a better shot, I think, to make the roster and to make a bigger impact, maybe, or play more snaps than Fehoko does. But I do think that it's not gonna. Neither one of these moves alter their draft prep. I just think they're kind of those safety blankets, to kind of fall back on if the draft doesn't fall a certain way.
Okay.
And like we've seen the Steelers make these moves, throughout the Kevin Colbert era. They sign free agents where they feel like they have needs, and then they go into the draft and they draft over those players that they sign. And that's just so that like you don't feel the need to reach or draft a certain position at a certain spot. So really business as usual, I feel like, for the Steelers with these signings. But Fehoko, like, at least he's definitely more of like a run defender than a pass rusher. Just I've only been able to watch like a handful of snaps this morning, but doesn't really offer a ton as a pass rusher. But just gives them, kind of a guy that can come in and play on the early downs in the middle.
Yeah, I agree. And that was their biggest thing, is that they needed somebody, because Adams is so pass rush specific. They needed that other body. I've seen clips. People were tossing clips on Twitter of his play at the end of the season. It looked pretty good. No complaints. I think it's a good move. I love that his mom tweeted out a picture of him in a Troy Polamalu jersey. That made my whole day. She followed me instantly, and I was just like, this lady is my new favorite person. Like, I like a mom who's involved on Twitter. They always make things better, a little bit happier. So yeah, that was cool.